to provide a little bit of a, I guess, a little bit of vision around where we see education going, what the classroom and how classrooms are transitioning, and also to talk a little bit about how Meraki comes in and can support you both in an innovative way, but to make sure that things within your schools or your institutions operate smoothly and things are secure. Today we'll also be joined by George Dorsey, who's from Cisco Meraki, and he's one of the solution architects, and we're very lucky to have him join us today. For those people who don't know about us, MOQdigital, we've been in education for quite a number of years, over 15 years now, and we have a specialty focus on education. And I guess our goal is to work with educational customers, whether they be K-12 or higher ed, to look at the ways in which technology can help provide better benefit for them, to give them a better and more superior experience, and I guess to help our customers to get the outcomes that they're looking for. So why the next generation classroom? Fundamentally because there's been so much talk in recent times. We've had the COVID remote learning, remote classroom notions. We've had online learning for some time, and we thought it was time for us to come through and talk a little bit about what the next generation classroom might look like, and that may not necessarily be as far away as we have initially thought. I guess when we sit down often and we do planning, or there's broader strategies around generations of classrooms, often the planning window is around 10 years. With the outbreak of COVID and the remote classrooms, there's been a whole range of, I think, really productive changes that have come forward and have fundamentally changed what we do. So the role and influence of technology in the education sector has become top of mind. And it will continue to become top of minds as schools and higher education are looking for ways to better engage students, to improve learning outcomes, to improve workplace efficiencies, but to also deliver in these multimodal type ways that we've had to do now. So what are we hearing from schools? Well, from schools, we hear very much about technology needing to support better learning outcomes. We very much hear about how technology is meant to be in there saving teachers time, so giving teachers time back to be doing more valuable work within the classrooms. And ultimately, how do we provide better ways in which the operations of schools work to, again, also either deliver better learning outcomes, save teachers' times, or often save teachers' money, save schools money. Now, in a university context, we certainly hear much more about student success, what does it mean to be successful, and how do we retain and continue to grow the nature and the types of students that we want. How do we continue to grow and foster an innovative teaching and learning program that's becoming more and more fragmented over time and bespoke? How do we continue to do some of the magnificent academic research that's going on in our educational institutions? And how do we make sure we have secure and connected campuses so that irrespective of what campus or where people are all connected? So I think at the moment, the classroom is going through a period of exciting changes. And schools and educational institutions around the world are now transforming to improve and empower the learning outcomes to drive student success for this current year's of students and beyond. Educators are focusing on providing students with the skills needed to fuel their growth and adjust to the tremendous culture and digital changes that are occurring across the landscape, particularly in modern times. When we often talk about transformation, I think a lot of us have been sitting around for some time waiting for the notion of a transformation to occur. I'm an avid believer that, for a very long period of time, we've had great levels of access to devices. Now, that's not necessarily true in all countries, but I think the accessibility to really smart technology now has certainly improved. The World Wide Web has been in schools since the 90s. So we've had a lot of devices and a lot of connected information that we've been able to bring together to deliver things for students. So we do live in a time of great change and tremendous potentials. We continue to provide better tools to give students equitable access. We certainly need to do and continue to grow the skills and capabilities for kids, for students to engage with these technologies in this rapidly transforming way. And we need to create and maximise ways in which we maximise the distractions, but we minimise the distractions, but we maximise the learning time. So waiting for this big transformation to happen, and I think we have been for some time, but I actually reckon that the great transformation has probably already happened. And I think it even happened prior to COVID. I think, you know, if you look at the number of connected devices, you look at the ways in which schools were engaging with technology, you look at the ways in which the transformation, the ways in which people are looking to improve processes through the use of technology, and certainly the available technology, I believe the transformation in schools has really already happened. So what does that mean? Well, it means that while COVID came along, there was a whole lot of schools, and not all schools, but there are a whole lot of institutions who were already in pretty good shape to be able to adjust to the needs of COVID. We certainly have reduced the planning windows, and certainly the focus then really in this COVID world has been focused around devices, the Wi-Fi, and the skills. When you talk about then the broader education goals that have been around, the OECD produces these education goals with 10-year windows. The education goals are really designed to give schools or institutions a bit of direction in terms of where people should be thinking about and what the broader vision of education is. Some of the key actions that they talk about on here are some of the areas that I think we've now through this COVID experience have realised that you know there's a whole lot of skills and knowledge and values and attitudes that we've had to take in place, we've had to consider. I think we've done a really good job of adapting to the change that's happened so quickly, and take my hat off to lots of people who work really hard, both in classrooms and in back rooms to make that transition happen. I think there's certainly been much stronger focus on well-being and will probably continue to do so. But also on the side of this diagram is the notion of agency, student agency, co-agency with peers, teachers and parents and communities. And that's about where we allow and who takes responsibility for what. And I think through this process, and there's frameworks, this new pedagogical framework, it's been talking about how we broaden learning partnerships. And I think with that learning partnership comes ways in which we think we should be working together, or the ways in which we can, the type of structures that we want to put in place, the new pedagogies. We've certainly had a great deal of experience in terms of leveraging digital. And obviously, the learning in many places has also become very much a factor of our way of being as we move forward. So within this context, within these new pedagogies, within the new partnerships, within the leveraging of digital and the learning everywhere, I think we've done a great job, and we've made many gains in this way without probably really even reflecting upon it and planning for it. So what have we done? We've certainly increased student agency, and that is students having the responsibility of taking more responsibility for their own learning, for creating independence and self-regulating. And for many students, that was a struggle, certainly at the start, as they come to understand, as they had to come to organise themselves, as there wasn't the teacher or the person standing behind them providing them with directions, that they actually had to take responsibility for their learning. Some adapted really well. I think some struggled, but I think there has been overall an improvement to the way in which students can take responsibility for their own learning. Teacher agency has also increased. We've seen a huge amount of professional growth, responsive through the responsiveness, the response that we've had to take, through the collaborative approach we've had to take, and the reflective practices that we've had to use in terms of being able to deliver or change the way in which we deliver in such a short period of time. We certainly also developed stronger partnerships with parents. And most parents now have for those who particularly did homeschooling of their students, have a much stronger understanding of the nature and the way in which their own children learn, and also the way in which the skills and the gaps that students might have in their own knowledge. We've certainly developed a climate and culture for learning in multiple cases, and we've certainly come much further along in the use of digital tools. And I guess one of the things that I guess in the haste of us trying to get out and get some of these sorts of things going, I think we probably didn't necessarily take into consideration, we probably didn't have the time just to sit around and think about how we might authentically engage with students around some of these capabilities. And I think as schools start to think about how they might move into a blended learning model, there's certainly much more consideration about how they might use these characteristics to reinforce student achievement, engagement, and well-being. So, what are the disruptors? Well, I think parents are still wanting to play a much stronger role with their kids, and I think they'll probably want to do so. Institutions will probably want to go back to their same models. The learning space paradigm is an interesting one because it was all about cost and density, and that's going to be a very difficult thing to deal with, particularly with physical distancing. And fundamentally, I think what we've still all come to understand is that teachers and faculties will play a pivotal role, not only in learning, but also in wellbeing. You would have heard, and my son often tells me, and I find my son often running quickly, more quickly to me if the Wi-Fi is off than if he's hungry. And I think over time you would have seen these things. Battery seems to have jumped to the bottom of the Maslow pyramid these days, but increasingly battery and Wi-Fi are becoming critical to the ability for us to be able to deliver services, and particularly the Wi-Fi, as we would have seen, device accessibility and the availability of Wi-Fi at appropriate levels has been a real challenge in our country and continues to be a real challenge in some communities. And then, of course, you've got the huge quantities of data that have been spun around, that are being driven, and the ways in which we're starting to use and interconnect information. So not only have we got a whole range of learning data coming, but we've also got a whole range of data and a whole range of information coming from a whole range of smart devices. And increasingly so, we're seeing more and more educational organisations plug and provide data. So there's not only just the normal volumes of data that comes through the learning that we've talked about, but also through a whole range of smart technologies that are now embedded into our many day-to-day factories and warehouses and stadiums and cars. So I guess the key questions is, well, how do you create the fluid spaces? Do the students all need to come on to school at the same time? What type of activities do require students to come on campus? How do you get the balance between the well-being and the engagement and the communication and the building of community with the need to shift to a blended model to make sure that we're prepared for the future? And so therefore, in some of that light, it would be very good if we could start to think about schools where there was an ease and richness of the experience. There was an easy movement between places, that information and services flow through physical spaces, and we continue to develop skills and capabilities for people to be able to engage and work with these things properly. So really, I think there's some great opportunity now for us to think about and to be able to try to work on ways in which we make the experience for people better and we ease the transition that we see between school and home. So from a Cisco Meraki perspective, they've been talking about the next generation learning environment for a long time. They've had frameworks, and I think they've had a whole lot of really great resources available. And I think to a degree they've been at the forefront, particularly around the collaboration and the personalisation for distance and blended learning. I think they've been at the forefront for a very long time, and I think they've got a very good story. And I guess that's part of the reason that we're very excited that they're able to join us today, because very much so they've been doing this for a very long time, and I think they're continuing to do really innovative things to help to try to improve and to really create that digital learning environment and framework for change. So what would we like to make it more seamless, I guess. People often say, well, that's all good, but what would we like to see? Well, certainly the flows between the online and the physical. We certainly want to be able to have the capacity of the Wi-Fi and to be able to configure it on the web. We want to ease the transition from campus to home. We certainly want to make sure that our devices, we know where they are, we can make changes and deploy things to them, and we know that they're safe. The whole physical distancing and the cameras, there's hotspots, there's ability now to use some of these cameras to do traffic flows. And so to start to get a better understanding of when people are on campus, how does the traffic flow to make sure that we can keep that sort of physical distancing that we need. There's a huge amount of sensors coming in, and I think Meraki also has a really good story about how they use and handle and manage that type of technology. I think one of the key things as we move forward is the movement away from energy and lighting and air conditioning into looking at how we use sensors to find optimal classroom environments. And certainly in a school and in an institution, network visibility and insight is extremely important. So I think they're the challenges. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to pass it over to George to talk about how Cisco Meraki can potentially help you to address some of those challenges.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brett. That's a great overview. I think you really provided some perspective and good summarization of kind of the challenges that schools and educators are facing now. So with that, I'm going to kind of take it over here and talk a little bit about the technology that's supporting some of these transformations and a little bit about Cisco Meraki. So again, um, George Dorsey, solution architect for Meraki. So I kind of look after the technical side of our partner management across APJC based in Singapore. So thanks again, Brett. Let's dive a little bit more into the tech here. So, what are the actual key drivers here? Why are we moving in this direction? And I think Brett said it pretty well, but I just want to reiterate, some of the key challenges that are driving this transformation. There is a huge push, and this is not just in Australia, this is globally, right? For supporting standardized online testing and simply supporting a significant increase in the number of devices when students actually are on campus. Students will have smart watches, they'll have smartphones, they'll have their laptops or tablets. And so we're talking about a significant increase in wireless requirement. And we'll talk a little bit more about how Wi-Fi 6 as a technology can help support that additional kind of load on the network. Digital learning is absolutely a real thing, especially as students are learning from home. So whether it's BYOD, when they're on campus, or actually kind of using their own devices at home to actually learn and interact with, maybe the school network remotely. There are a huge number of initiatives to support a digital learning kind of curriculum. Additionally, schools are needing to be smarter. The network teams are needing to be smarter and needing to be able to balance decisions based on how the network is being utilized. And so, using analytics to understand how much time students are actually spending learning versus, spending time on Netflix or spending time gaming or something like that is a really important thing for schools to be able to understand how to, kind of distribute resources, but also potentially filter some of those activities out during certain hours of the day. And then security is always paramount. These are our kids. We need to make sure that they're not exposed to content or situations that they shouldn't actually be, being exposed to at their age. And so we need to provide a safe and secure learning environment and comply with regulations as well. So these are some of the drivers. Brett mentioned a lot of these, but this is a global thing. We see this across the entire world as a network vendor, as Cisco Meraki. This is a real thing that we're seeing, and why we're investing in technologies that help specifically support an education, kind of model and that transformation of how education is moving forward. So in terms of, again, some of the, kind of the things, the density of devices, right? We need high performing wireless networks without the maintenance, without complicated controllers. We need simple, fast Wi-Fi that supports a whole bunch of devices. We need to secure those devices. We need to secure those users. So whether it's something like intrusion detection and prevention and malware prevention, all the way out at the sort of network edge, or securing individual devices, BYOD devices, or if your school has a one-to-one program where each student is issued a device, you need to secure that device as well. And then finally, looking at physical security, and especially right now, and Brett mentioned this, we need to understand how many kids are in a certain space. Are they within the kind of acceptable number of people in a physical space, or is there a potential that they're sort of violating social distancing? So how do we use physical security systems like the MV cameras, for example, to actually ensure physical space security and adherence to the social distancing requirements? Now, all of this sounds complicated, right? It's a lot, especially for those who aren't necessarily, everyone is tasked with so many different things. How do we achieve all of this without it taking up, 20 hours of our day? And so with Cisco Meraki, all of these analytics are out of the box. It's easy to deliver kind of this best in class experience without a huge, overhead of IT staff and IT time. And so I mentioned this already, but endpoint management, all the way security and management, all the way from your gateway to the internet at your different schools, at your different campuses, down to the individual devices. Meraki can truly deliver an end-to-end experience for you as an IT manager to, really provide the best-in-class student experience so that your students can focus on learning and aren't having IT issues all the time. So all of this is basically provided by the Meraki full stack. So if you're not already aware of Cisco Meraki, we sort of evolved from being a wireless company to provide now the entire network infrastructure. And all of these different devices that you'll see here, all of these different product categories. So Wi-Fi 6 access points for the fastest, most reliable Wi-Fi, security appliances that are interacting with Cisco's Talos engine to provide intrusion detection and prevention, the best in class security, network security in the world, simple switching, endpoint management, Meraki Insight. We'll do a highlight on Meraki Insight later in the session here, and then physical security cameras. All these different solutions are unified by our Meraki dashboard and our cloud. So it allows you to deploy these devices simply, easily, and without a whole bunch of overhead, and then go into one single pane of glass to actually manage all of them and monitor all of them, and then monitor your endpoint devices as well, all with one simple login. So one IT manager of a large number of students, even thousands of students, it's actually a reality for them to be able to do all of this in kind of one single platform. So I want to highlight John 23rd College here. It's a Western Australia college and highly accredited. They have some of the best results in terms of certificate of education, 100% success on certificate of education in Western Australia, for Western Australia, and across all their students in each graduating class. And so I want to highlight kind of how they've used Meraki to continue to provide that level of education. So they range all the way from pre-K to year 12. over 1,500 students, 240 staff. They have a relatively small IT team. In some ways, they operate a little bit more like a university because they've got a really wide, large campus with many different buildings, and they've got 2,000 client devices. They have got some one-to-one program going on. They also have BYOD support for students to bring their own devices. And so they were really looking for an entire refresh of all of their network infrastructure and their endpoint management. And so they looked to Meraki to help provide that. So what were some of their challenges, and why were they looking to, evolve their, kind of technology across their entire campus? They were really dated. They had fragmented network. They had multiple different off-the-shelf solutions in different buildings. They had different management platforms. Essentially, it was a huge pain to manage this network. And they also were running into issue with, increasing devices. This is something that we've all faced, as educators, as IT administrators for these schools. I'm sure that you have absolutely run into issues where your access points are not able to support the sheer number of devices, or you have to tell students, sorry, we can't allow you to connect to the wireless network because we just simply can't support it. You can't connect your iPhone or your Android device because we simply can't support it. They also didn't have visibility. So their network was clogged. It was not working properly, but they had no idea why. And I think probably people on the call here can relate to that. Uh, we know we're having network problems, but we don't know what those network problems are. And so with Meraki, they're able to get more visibility into that, and also do better troubleshooting. They were very reactive. Everything was like a ticket got raised or a student came and complained directly into the office, the IT office, and they weren't able to help solve those problems or troubleshoot those problems on the spot. And so with Meraki, the visibility that they're able to now get across their entire, almost university scale campus is so much better. They're able to see all their access points, their switches, they're able to see security cameras and the uptime of those security cameras and how they're actually performing. And so it's been an amazing transformation for this college, because now if a student comes in or has a complaint, or if a parent is attending a large production, let's say a play, or if they're doing a large assembly of any kind and they're having issues, they have visibility into what's going on, and more importantly, the number of issues that they're having has been reduced significantly. So if you look at the number of help desk tickets that they used to have compared to now with Meraki, they saw actually an 80% decrease, which is what you want as educators, right? You want your network to simply work. You want it to be secured and functioning and high performing, but in some ways you sort of want the technology to disappear and just allow for the teachers and professors, and allow for the students to just learn and teach and do their, do what students should be doing. Um, and so they've seen a huge increase in the amount of traffic that's actually been passing across their network, but they've also seen a huge reduction in the amount of actual, kind of tickets that they have. And so this is something that is, I think, a really interesting and important point, because there's, again, they're supporting way more traffic than they've ever supported before, and they are able to troubleshoot if there is an issue. Even though there are fewer issues, they may come up, takes a fraction of the time to troubleshoot. They're able to now pursue new projects as well. So, before, e-learning was something that they had really been interested in moving towards, or helping to support, their on-campus in-person learning. But now, before, they were so worried about the network being able to handle that traffic, they weren't able to do that. And so now they're actually able to do that. They're able to take on these long-term projects that are going to completely change and maintain as well the standard that they have wanted to achieve in student education. And it's also reduced their costs significantly as well. So, what was the move to the Meraki stack look like? They looked at all of the different products. So again, they've deployed Systems Manager, which is our mobile device management platform that allows them to do on-campus management of BYOD devices as well as school-owned devices. But most importantly now, as students are learning from home, they've had to support essentially the ability for students to have, all of the access that they need at home to all of the resources in their data center and all the resources out on the internet. But they've also had to maintain management of those devices and understand how those devices are being used and make sure that students are actually using them to learn and not just using them to stream. And so in addition to that, they've also looked at high density wireless coverage. So they're able to now support on-campus initiatives. I'll do a quick aside here. We have a number of schools that are really looking to improve the stability and density of and speed of their wireless networks, and do a wireless refresh. And actually with Meraki, are some of these educators have been able to actually issue relatively low cost access points to students at home that automatically broadcast the school wireless network at home. So if students connect, they can connect to just like they normally would with their iPad or Chromebook or whatever it might be. And that particular network is then connected back over VPN automatically. So in a passive sense, without the student having to do, a whole bunch of configuration on their device, back to any resources that might be on campus. Switching has been a huge improvement for for John 23rd here, and also for tons of other educators, because previously many of these and hopefully none of you on the call had to deal with this, but a whole bunch of unmanaged switches or different types of switches where you don't know if kids are plugging in access points to try and bypass network security. You don't know what's connected to the switch and where. And so with Meraki, you're able to actually get that visibility. Then I mentioned cameras before as well. And so, in terms of understanding physical spaces, in terms of understanding if people are actually social distancing, and also for making sure that, if there is an incident, that you're able to actually pull that footage remotely, and you don't have to actually go on site and connect, or pull a DVD out of a network video recorder or something like that. You're able to actually access all of this and leverage the power of the Meraki platform to understand student movement, to understand how different physical spaces are being utilized. And I think that's really key to being able to move forward with a safe learning environment for students and that are trying to kind of come back to school and achieve, I guess, what we're now calling this new or a new normal, or whatever phrase you want to call it. And then of course on the MX side, with the security appliance, doing content filtering and all of that is able to be achieved whether the students are actually physically on campus or even if they're off site as well. So I want to kind of take another direction here and talk a little bit about one particular product from Cisco Meraki, which is Meraki Insight. So Meraki Insight is it's basically a software application that runs on top of our MX appliance, and so it's able to actually send probes out to all of the different WAN applications, all the different e-learning applications that a school might be using, to better understand how those applications are performing. And I really like this particular case study here because I think it speaks to kind of the heart of what we want for our students, which is equal opportunity for all of them to learn. And especially when it comes to e-learning, technology problems get in the way all the time. And so how do we make sure that those technology problems aren't impacting a student unfairly. So this particular use case here is for in-class and in-class e-learning and online testing. So we had an issue here with a couple of different school districts, and this is based in the U.S., but a couple different school districts, they needed to provide that equal access to all those materials, and they needed to make sure that apps were performing properly and providing equal access to every single student. And so with Meraki Insight, and I'll show you this in just a moment, they are actually able to demonstrate and identify all of their different students with the different applications that they're using, and see if if Bobby is having the same experience as Johnny, in the classroom for that particular e-learning app. And so only with Meraki Insight have they been able to actually get that visibility. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition here into a quick demo of the Meraki dashboard. So hopefully everyone can see this here. If you haven't been in the Meraki dashboard before, you'll know that, or you won't know, but when you log in, you'll be able to see very quickly, all of your different individual locations. So right now we're looking at our Meraki corporate network. This is what we use globally. And you can see all of our different locations, which ones are up and which ones are down. We can also see, a visible look at that as well on a map. Now, obviously, if you're talking about a school district, this is going to be, a much smaller scale. But I think you can get the idea that, if you click into, a different area, you're able to see, your different locations here. You're able to see if they're performing well or not. And so again, for the purposes of the demo here, I wanted to focus primarily on, kind of just the visibility aspect. So the first thing we'll look at is a single site. So we're looking at, let's imagine that this was a single school. And so we're able to see really easily here, how many students are connected directly to the network, or if you look at this little globe here, this is how many are connected over a VPN connection. And then we're able to really easily see the applications that are being used as well. So of course, I think you can expect to see a lot of video conferencing applications taking up kind of most of the bandwidth here. Everyone's on WebEx or Skype or or Microsoft Teams, or pick your kind of collaboration tool of choice. But you're able to easily go in and see, for example, with WebEx here, which of these different devices are actually connected to WebEx and what they're actually doing, with WebEx, how much traffic they're passing. And so it's really easy to get analytics right out of the box on how these different devices are performing. Now, I wanted to talk specifically around a couple of different things in the demo here, which is cameras and Meraki Insight. So on the camera side of things here, we're able to see very easily, in a physical space, what's happening. So I'm pulling this stream directly from San Francisco. It's proxying it through the cloud securely, and I'm actually able to see, over time how many people have been in the space. So it looks like people are adhering to our rules here, where you're not supposed to come into the office. For the most part, we've only had a couple of people, 3 people or so, come in during the day here, so we can see analytics over time. We're also able to see, as you can see, a heat map here of where people are. And then one of the other things I want to talk about with Meraki cameras is also the ability to do real-time people recognition, and also leverage some of our technology partners to do social distancing. So we have a technology partner, Every Angle. We also have one called VApp. So if you look at if you just look up Every Angle here, I'll just look up Meraki. You can see it's actually made a bunch of it's gotten onto the Google screenshots here, but we can actually see here that every angle we have a page here for you to understand and help understand like some of the technology partners that we have, and we're actually able to see a live demo here of some of their physical distancing controls that they are able to provide with Meraki cameras. So you can see here, if you just scroll down, we're actually able to see a live dashboard here, and this is using the Meraki APIs. So we can actually see, age groups. We can see how many people are in a physical location. Now this one is designed for retail, but if you can imagine a classroom, you're able to actually, understand how many people are in the class. If they're adults or children, you're able to see, how many different, cars are actually in the queue as well, like waiting to, potentially pick up students. And so technologies like this really allow you to understand better how a physical space is being utilized. And this is all powered by the Meraki cameras and our API in conjunction with one of our technology partners, Every Angle. And so the last thing I did want to show here is again Meraki Insight. And so what we have here is really a view of all of our different, let's say, if this was a education deployment, it'd be all of our different schools and all of the applications. So let's say we had an e-learning application. You're able to custom define applications here, and we also pull in a whole bunch of applications automatically as well. So all you need to do is go here and you're able to identify different applications that you actually want to monitor. And then once you identify those, you're able to go in and you can see, if these applications are having any issues. So I'll just go into Google Drive here. So we're now able to see Google Drive across, again, our different locations. So London, San Francisco, and Sydney. And then we can go in, and as I mentioned before, it's really important for us to be able to evaluate if our students are having a good experience with different applications. So we can see the overall performance of the application. We can see that this particular one is having a slow response time, but more importantly, we can actually get down to the client level. So if this was an e-learning application, we'd be able to see really easily with a score out of 100 what the actual performance of this application was for a student. So if the student were to complain, they say, oh, like the reason I failed this test or the reason I wasn't able to do this homework assignment is because I can't access this particular content. We'd be able to actually go in and see and identify if it really is an issue with their device or if it's just something that they're it's the dog ate my homework, or if it's actually a problem with the network itself. And so you can see, we rank all of the individual student devices here with a score for this application. This, let's say it's an e-learning application out of 100. So that hopefully that gives you a little bit of kind of an idea of how Meraki can help support kind of the initiative here in education with MOQ, and help provide the best experience possible, the best learning experience for our students, and the best teaching experience for our faculty and teachers as well. So with that, I want to go ahead and see if we have any questions here. So let's see, if you do have a question, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A. But Brett, I mean, I guess while we wait for some questions, is there anything you kind of wanted to add or talk about in terms of how you're thinking about the future of education and how Meraki can support MOQ's initiatives?
I guess I'm also, George, very interested in, obviously, as we've got devices now being spread around and school devices going home, and I'm interested in how Meraki can potentially help us to better manage the devices and make sure that the students or people have got the right software equipment that they
Yeah,
require to deliver to make sure they can be successful. Because obviously, now they're connected, and you've got some really good offerings there. We know what they're doing. I think that probably the important middle step is making sure that they've got the right gear, and we know who's got what, and they've got the right software to be successful as well.
yeah, it's a great question. So, one of the great ways to do that is through Systems Manager. And so Systems Manager is our mobile device management. And so whether it's a school-owned device or an individual student's device, we're able to actually kind of have control over those devices and how they're functioning on our network, whether they're on site on campus or if they're at home. So if we pick on one of these devices, for example, you can see, some information around security policies here. If this device is actually, behaving properly, or if maybe a student has removed some type of application that they shouldn't have removed. You can see if there's, profiles missing on the device. The other thing you can do here in Systems Manager is, you're able to push VPN profiles and enforce VPN profiles. So if you want to make sure that, when a student is using a school-owned device, that they're VPN'd in, and sending all traffic, back through to the campus. First of all, it's going to allow them to have any access to any databases or resources that might be on campus that aren't available necessarily off campus without a VPN. But in addition to that, you're also able to, as you were kind of alluding to, Brett, make sure that they have the proper applications installed on their devices as well. And so you're able to, whether it's a school, proprietary application or an e-learning application that's available on, the iOS store or in the Google Play Store, you're able to actually enforce installment of that device onto any client that's actually enrolled in Systems Manager. So for example, these are primarily corporate here, but you could imagine, if these were actually e-learning applications, you're able to actually push all these applications out to different devices. And so you're able to categorize, if you want to do it by grade, kindergartners get some applications, and maybe people who are in fifth year are getting different applications. You're able to enforce all of that right through the same single dashboard that you would use to, kind of manage all of your switching and your wireless. So you really do get a holistic view of your entire network, whether students are on campus or at home doing e-learning from home.
And if I'm the IT guy, do I need to be on school campus to do all of this, or can I achieve that if our campus is shut down for cleaning or whatever? Can I still manage this from wherever I happen to be, or do I have to come on a campus to do this sort of work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do it from anywhere. We always like to joke at Meraki that you can manage your entire network from the beach if you want.
That sounds
So
good.
anywhere you have a network connection, you're able to actually enforce these policies on devices. Especially if they're school-owned devices, you can force this at any time as long as the device is enrolled. You're able to control how that device is going to behave from anywhere you have an internet connection, as well as being able to do, real-time monitoring of the network. So, if you want to understand and make sure when you're not on campus that the network is up, just so that, essential staff, for example, can get connectivity, or more importantly, people and students who are trying to remotely connect are able to access those critical resources. You're able to see, in real time, the health of the entire network here. And, if devices are up, access points, switches, even security cameras here, if they're up, functioning properly, and you're able to do that from anywhere. I think that's one of the big benefits of the Cisco Meraki platform is it's totally, dashboard is totally hosted in the cloud. All of our devices, as long as they have an internet connection, you're able to, see the status of that device, and even troubleshoot that device remotely, all the way down to doing a remote packet capture of what's happening on that device in real time.
Well, thanks very much, George. I noticed we haven't had any more questions pop up, so we might call a stop here. But I really do appreciate your presentation. You've given us a great insight into not only what I guess Cisco Meraki is known and does extremely well, which is really around the network, but given us some insights into the way in which Cisco Meraki is continuing to innovate in ways that we think are important and are significant in the operations of schools and the operation of learning environments. And I know you guys have got exciting things coming out all the time. So and I guess from an MOQdigital, we're very glad that we've got you on board as one of our significant partners. So thanks very much, George, for your presentation, and thanks very much for your time today. If anybody's got any further questions, or if you've got anything that you would like to talk to us directly about, then more than happy to reach out to MOQdigital, and we'll be more than happy to assist you in any way we can. Thanks again very much for everyone for their time today. I really appreciate it. As I said, if you need any assistance, please feel free to reach out to us. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.